want to welcome all that has come tonight. I want to remind everybody to turn their cell phones to silent if they haven't already. And we're just going to proceed to get started. So
Use your mic. Here.
is that better?
There you go.
Yeah.
Now you're.
So we're going to move forward. So we originally had Alderman Grant for the invocation. Unfortunately, he's not able to join us today. So Alderman Leonard is going to do the invocation.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Please pray with me. Heavenly Father, we ask that you bless this town and keep it a beautiful and friendly place to live. We pray for your guidance to enable this board to work together in unity to make fair and informed decisions today. We also pray that our police officers, firefighters, and members of our armed services here and around the world remain safe as they risk so much for our security. They earn our respect and our admiration every day. We further ask that you keep an especially watchful eye over our forward deployed service members who are serving in harm's way, as so many of them at various times have called North Topsail Beach home. This is especially true as we pause later on this month to recognize the 78th anniversary of the brave actions of a few good men who rose a flag on a volcanic island in the Pacific Theater at a place called Iwo Jima. We also pray that our town be spared the ravages of hurricanes and other national disasters, and that everyone associated with the town remains safe and secure. We ask this in his name. Amen.
Thank you, sir. And we're going to move forward to the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is the approval of the agenda, and I just have one question on the agenda. I don't know if anybody has anything else, but with Mr. Grant not being here today, do we want to push the BISAC update, or Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to move forward with that?
I don't see why we don't move forward.
Okay, I didn't know if he needed to be here for it, that's all. Does anybody else have any questions about the agenda? Can I have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Then we're gonna move right into the manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item to discuss is a Phase 5 project, which of course is ongoing with ST Wooten. Approximately 105,333 cubic yards have been placed, and that's as of January 30th. I pulled the board last week for a consensus to open up the Second Avenue access to expedite the project and to also aid in the logistics of having two contractors coming on board that'll be working the project simultaneously. All board members were in favor of opening the access. Our engineers have requested approval from CAMA, and I have been informed by Fran at the end of the day on Monday that they are okay with us proceeding with closing that access off and putting it back in following beach construction. So I'll be publishing a notice once I receive a timeline that we will be temporarily closing until May. Trucks will continue to use the Gray Street access as well, so I just want to note that. Any questions?
Does May go, I thought we had to be done prior to May with the turtle season.
Right, through the end of April,
Okay.
but,
Just to give us time to finish
yes,
up and clear
yeah.
out. Okay.
When I say May, it means end of April, beginning of May.
No
Thank
later
you.
than 1 May.
Correct.
Thank you.
The Channel to Jacksonville, again, this is an Army Corps project that we've been reporting on. They originally expected to work through January 20th, which is what I reported at the previous board meetings. I've not received an official update from them, but during another meeting, they did make mention to expect work to take place through February 9th. So with that information, I did post an update based on that information that I'd received on our projects page, along with some drone footage that we had taken about a week ago. So that's been posted as an update on the projects page for now until I receive something official from the Army Corps. The Phase 4 Coastal Storm Damage Mitigation Fund grant, the permit that was filed is still pending. We expect a response in early February. I prepared and submitted a one-year contract extension to the state in advance, since we know our project will start next November. I submitted on January 17th and received a confirmed receipt from the state on January 18th that they have received it. We received notification that we would be receiving a deposit in amount of $2,625,000 already, which is good news. This is, however, different from the contract documents, which read they reimburse based on invoices submitted on a quarterly basis. So once we receive notification, we reach back out to the state to confirm that the monies that we were receiving are not in error, to make sure that everything's being done correctly. And they did confirm that this is how they will be proceeding, and that they are fully meaning to starting to transfer the funds at this point in time. So Caitlin will be working with our auditor to set up the funds. So we want to make sure that everything's set up correctly on the front end, so that she'll be working closely with the auditor on that. And you'll have a budget amendment at next month's meeting for receipt of those funds. Okay, the latest meeting with Mickey Suggs of the Army Corps of Engineers, along with Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem, was held on January 12th. Fran completed the review of the additional modeling and provided to the Army Corps prior to that meeting. The modeling that I provided to the board suggests terminal groin with inlet management remain as the preferred alternative. At that meeting, we did set a goal of issuing a notice of intent for me to announce at our February board meeting, which of course is today. I did follow up with Mickey on Monday. Mickey had let us know that Tuesday that there's a new requirement for notice of intent publication at this point in time. It has to be signed by their South Atlantic Division commander. He is not sure on the timeline for the process, but he feels at best this could be posted by next Friday. That is the latest.
And I think the good news there is, even though there's a slight delay, it's still moving forward, and I think that's only because you continue to ask them.
Is that Colonel Bennett? Is that who their director is?
No.
No, it's Mickey Sugg.
No, there were
No,
two different
no.
names that have to
No,
sign it.
there-
It was not Colonel Bennett.
Okay,
No.
it's Bennett's boss, who's down in Atlanta.
Yeah,
It may, yes,
Yeah.
And
yes, sir.
he's another colonel.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I can give you the name later if you'd
I
like.
think we met him at one of the byways meetings, unless he's changed out. And
An update on Richard Peters Park. A Hohanu water level sensor has been installed at Richard Peters Park by TI Coastal just as of yesterday. It's been installed on the smaller of the piers pavilion area. This, again, is a solar-powered sensor that gets installed on either pilings or bridges, so it can hover over the water to be measured. I have notified the American Shore and Beach Preservation Association that it has been installed. So once I received confirmation that it is recognized and it appears on their dashboard, I checked this morning, it hasn't appeared yet. So once I see that, I will share the information on our Facebook page and website of the dashboard page, so people can monitor as they see fit. Any questions on that? Mike looked like he had a question.
Yeah. He's
It
holding.
can wait.
Okay. Also, I'm working with a sign company for the educational component to the Living Shoreline project that was installed. I provided content to a company who's making a markup right now. Once it's finalized, it'll take 4 weeks to make. So it'll be a sandblasted sign that goes in Richard Peters Park in the area of the Living Shoreline project that just details what about the project, what it does, the benefits of it, and the agencies that have been involved with making that happen. Fire station replacement. The Board of Adjustment held a public hearing on Monday, January 30th at 5:30 p.m. to consider the town's variance request from the Unified Development Ordinance 7.05G to allow for construction of Fire Station 2 at 3304 Gray Street. I received notice on Tuesday that included a summary of findings of fact that the board makes the following conclusions. A showing of good insufficient cause has been made. A determination that failure to grant the variance would result in exceptional hardship, and a determination that the granting of a variance will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to public safety, or extraordinary public expense, create nuisance, cause fraud on or victimization of the public, or conflict with existing local laws or this article. Therefore, on the basis of the foregoing, it was ordered that a variance be granted from the town's higher standard of enforcing V-zone development standards in an AZ zone identified in Unified Development Ordinance 7.05G to allow for construction of Fire Station 2, again at 3304 Gray Street, North Topsail Beach. That further, that the design meets or exceeds NFIP AE flood zone requirements for commercial, non-residential development with 12-foot flood base, 12-foot base with flood elevation, and 2-foot freeboard, including dry flood proofing of the below regulatory flood where the use is anything other than parking, access, or storage. Of course, Brian.
If I just may, Madam Mayor and Board, the evidence was uncontested that as designed, it meets all of the federal flood regulations. We just have a more stringent local ordinance. So I just wanted, even with the variance, we're still in compliance with all federal regulations. I think that's important to note. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any person that's aggrieved by the decision of the appeal board may appeal such decision to the court as provided in North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 7A. The next step of the process is for the project to be on the planning board's agenda for consideration. That is being held February 9th, and then continue to the Board of Alderman meeting on March 1st.
So just from a process perspective, the next step for the board will be to wait until March 1st till it's presented back to us from the planning board.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Okay, the next item is.
Wait, I'm sorry, Alderman Leonard.
Yeah, real quick, does that give staff enough time to do what needs to be done? Or do we need to consider having a special meeting of the Board of Aldermen after the planning board makes their decision to move this along more smartly?
No, we're on target. The plans are actually sitting upstairs now, while staff is going through them and signing off as we speak. So that'll be done in advance of the planning board meeting. And we've been meeting regularly, once to 2 times a week, staff internally on this subject. Any further questions? Okay. The budget. I provided a proposed budget calendar for fiscal year 23-24 to the board on Friday for review. I received some feedback, so far no conflicts. I can read these dates, or if you want to let me know if there's conflicts that.
I know I looked and I'm okay with the dates. And I will say that I know we have 2 dates on a couple of these workshops. I know the past few years, we've only used 1 day.
Right.
So if that helps for folks with their planning purposes, I can't remember the last time we went into a 2-day.
Yeah, that was my question. The March 14th, 15th session, I wonder if that would be finished, you think, within a day and a half by noon on
Yeah.
March 15th at the latest?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's
And
feasible.
I'll be okay then.
Yeah, I had a conflict with the 15th, we could discuss later.
So I think if we target these dates, that we're good. And I think that we should have the goal of trying to be through the meetings within a day or a day and a half.
Okay. And I did talk to Rick briefly this morning, and he was okay with the dates that were proposed, so he didn't have any conflicts other than he does plan to be out of town on at the June 7th meeting, which is the regular Board of Aldermen meeting. And the question was asked in the past if he could attend remotely to vote on it, and the answer was yes in the past. So
That, I think the way that it's written is he's allowed to attend remotely. The board needs to vote on whether he's able to vote or not. So,
And he can't, his remote participation can't be part of the quorum, you have to have a quorum.
right,
first.
understand. I can't remember the last time we, as a board, ever denied somebody the ability to vote just because they were remote. So, I don't believe that's an issue for your calendar.
Okay.
We'll have to, there's a nuance on closed session, though, because the policy has it. We'd have to waive that policy if you want him to be, we won't be voting in closed session anyway.
No, it
No.
would be open, open. Okay.
Okay. So so there's no other conflicts at this point? Okay, so February 7th and 8th, I'll be meeting with department heads, and staff on these days and schedule any follow-ups that are necessary. March 14th and March 15th will be the scheduled Board of Alderman budget workshops to be held from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. here at Town Hall in the boardroom. April 19th and April 20th, Board of Alderman budget workshops to be held from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at Town Hall here in the boardroom. May 10th will be a public hearing on the budget to be held at 1 p.m. here at Town Hall in the boardroom. And then, of course, June 7th will be slated for budget ordinance adoption to be done during our regular June Board of Alderman meeting. The schedule does allow, if things come up, if we need to have additional meetings during May, we can, there's time built in there. We have some leeway if we need to schedule additional workshops, we can do that.
Okay.
Okay, that concludes my report.
Does any of the board have any questions on the manager's report that you want to bring up now? Okay. Then we're going to move on to open forum. Do we have anybody signed up?
No, Madam
Does
Mayor.
anybody want to speak? Yes, sir.
I just want to thank you guys for, I noticed in the agenda, you're specifying what the initials mean, and it's appreciated.
Thank you. Then we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All approve? All right, public presentations and hearings. So I understand our presentation on the audit from Mr. Banks will be remotely on the screen.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, can you hear us okay?
Yes. Can you see the presentation on the screen?
Yes, we can. So you're good to start walking through it, sir.
All right, good. My name's Austin Eubanks. I'm the audit.
Does the board have any questions? I had one request, is that I didn't see this presentation in the packet earlier. If we could get the presentation for all of the board members and be able to share with the public, I think that'd be great. Yes, sir.
I think Caitlin said that
Okay.
presentation.
So I do have a question for you, sir. In the past, our town has struggled with our cash position in the general fund with the local government commission, and it seems like we have rectified that problem the last year or so. Can you comment any further on that?
Yeah, so, the main issue that the FTC takes, beat of, for towns is, like I alluded to, that 34% of the expenditures. However, North Topsail is sitting on 9 months, at 77%. And that, the majority of that comes from the cash. So we're doing very well in that regard. So you have 9 months worth of coverage. So let's say if the town doesn't collect any more money, however, we're still able to run as normal for the operation side for another 9 months.
Okay, thank you.
And then, all right.
Any other questions? I think we are good. Thank you, sir, for participating. We greatly appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the next item would be a presentation from Mr. Way, our coastal engineer. Hi, Fran.
Hello, can it?
Yep,
I'm there.
we can see you.
Okay, great. I'm Fran Way, a coastal engineer working with the town. We've got several projects ongoing, and Alice touched upon most of them, or all of them, and I will just kind of, add in some information. Let me share my screen. Here we have just an overview of the town of North Topsail Beach, the oceanfront shorelines, starting in phase 1, up in next to New River Inlet, and to phase 2, 3, 4, 5 down on the Surf City town limit. We're going to go through all these projects. We have, we have the Army Corps of Engineers project that's been ongoing right now, as Alice mentioned. We're going to discuss the phase 1 Cat G project. It's about 15,000 cubic yards. And then we also, the phase 4 state grant and the phase 5 ongoing truck haul. We've had dune revegetation for all the phases. And then the Onslow County Beach Access 4, which is in phase 3, that, we will also have an update on that one. As Alice mentioned, this project's going on. This is the Army Corps of Engineers project. It's a beneficial use of dredge material. The town, doesn't have a lot. This is a Corps funded and contracted project where, the town has some input to the Corps, but the Corps ultimately runs this project. Here is the phase 1 project right at the Topsail Reef Villas. This was permitted. Basically, this project there's 15,000 cubic yards of material of FEMA mitigation qualified material. When we went for the permitting, we permitted 45,000 cubic yards, just in case there was just a little headroom there. Just in case, there was, we could place more sand, and then the town had more money. We did talk with ST Wooten, and they're the truck haulers right now doing the phase 5 work. For the 15,000 cubic yards, they went up to the site and looked at the site, and, they pretty much, for 15,000 cubic yards, they estimate, their cost estimate was $40 per cubic yard. And that comes out to $600,000 So that is kind of where we are with that. And I'm working with Alice. They have a couple different ways to get to this, to put the sand on the beach, and there's either they have a belt press machine where they would thinking about getting between buildings 1 and 2 and buildings 1 and 2 up here, and just kind of conveyor belting the sand onto the beach. And that does seem like they're leaning towards that. The other access is the Jenkins Way access that's existing, that's down the beach a little bit, so that would be a little more of a beach drive. And then that would close down the Jenkins Way access as well. Obviously, there's some coordination here, some logistical coordination with Topsail Revilla condos to make sure. And this between 1 and 2, this last summer, there was a lot of heavy equipment here when they were redoing the sandbags, and so I would imagine it's going to be a similar, there's going to be some similar heavy equipment in this area, just like there was this summer when they were redoing the sandbags.
So, Fran, I do have a question on that. So you're saying that what we have a price in hand for right now is the 15,000 cubic yards? But the
Correct.
permit allows us to place up to 45,000 cubic yards.
Correct.
So do we have a price for the additional 30,000 cubic yards?
It would,
Yes, it's the same price, $40 per cubic yard.
Okay, so the pricing is the same, there's no, okay, all right.
the cost for the 15,000 cubic yards with mobilization is 605,000.
Okay.
Because there's $5,000 mobilization cost. And then the cost, if you would choose to do the additional 30,000 cubic yards, would be an additional $1,200,000.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. So my understanding is one of the options is to truck haul the sand from Jenkins Way up to where it's going to be placed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It's not going to happen at high tide.
No.
It's not. It's
No.
not an option, Fran. It's not a viable
Okay.
option.
No, it's not.
How far south does the 15,000 cubic yards take it?
This particular footprint is the entire 45,000 cubic yards. So it's 15,000. We would do, the permit conditions are always, the PAMA permit is pretty much a stickler on, you can only put sand on one section of the shoreline once. So we would not do like a thin strip along the entire, we would do about a third of this footprint. And then Mother Nature just moves it up and down the coast, keeps it in the surf zone, and it kind of, benefits, there's lots of spreading benefits along the shoreline. But it would be about a third of that.
So I'm just gonna state my concern with this right now is that the slide, I believe that we've been looking at each month, is a little bit deceiving in that it's not all FEMA funded, right? So 15,000 of it sounds to me like is what is FEMA funded, and then the additional 30,000 is on our new business or continuing business for Ms. Darian to kind of go through with us, but the town has a share or an expense in that 1.2 million.
Yes.
So I would like to, Fran, I would like to have that slide updated where it says FEMA funded at the bottom, because that's not accurate.
Okay.
Okay, and it's just
Okay.
deceiving, it's just deceiving. I understand the permit was for the full 45,000, but if folks are looking at this, including the board members, I've been thinking that that's what we're doing, not that we've got an additional expense that we as a town have to figure out how to fit into our budget.
Okay.
Thank you,
I
sir.
understand.
Okay,
You're right, that's the permitted area, not where the sand's gonna end up.
well, but that's
Or
it's a
not.
big deal. I mean,
Yeah, it
it's,
is a big deal.
Yes.
15,000 is what is reimbursable for FEMA, but the additional 30,000 would have to come out of Fund 30, which is what we'll discuss on what your options are under continuing business.
okay, thank you. Thanks, Fran.
here we have the Phase 5 shoreline. Work is headed north. They are getting close to where they will stop and will start at Gray Street and work south. The project's, going, as planned. ST Wooten is, they're working the project, and then the other truck hauler, CM Mitchell, will begin here probably, later this month. And then, as Alice mentioned, and the board has been briefed, and this is the beach nourishment, this is not the dune project, and the sand looks great, by the way, and we know, and then the CAMA folks, and the Fish and Wildlife folks, and the Wildlife Resource Commission folks did stop by this project about 2 weeks ago, and they had nothing, they basically didn't bring it up, which is actually a good thing, which means they have no concerns, and it's a good thing for them not to be, they're not concerned about it at all, so that's good. And then, going along with that, here's the Second Avenue beach access. Over here is the February 2020 aerial, and you can see that this was used, and this was for the Hurricane Matthew Dune project. This was, was an active beach access area, just a few years ago. And then this right here is an aerial photo just from a week or two ago. The dune, it has been rebuilt, but it isn't, it doesn't have a lot of mature vegetation on it. And the regulators were like, we're okay with this is fine. And this should help with the ST Wood really would like to do this, and they'd like to do it actually this week. And I know Alice mentioned about timing and trying to give, homeowners a little advance notice, but they would really kind of, like to do this, as soon as possible. And I told them to kind of hold on when I was going to, talk with the board and make sure that we went through the process. But ST would like to kind of start working this as soon as possible so they can really maximize the benefit of having this additional beach access for the last part of the work. And the work here is pretty much just north of this access, so it will cut down on beach driving quite a bit with the off-road trucks.
So do
and
we?
Then the phase. Yep.
I'm just, Alice. Do we need a board consensus on the Second Avenue access?
Well, when I polled the board, you all.
I thought you did already.
You all were in agreement 100%
So we don't have to do. Fran doesn't need anything additional from us right now.
No, I just need the timeline of when they'll be closing it, so I can communicate that.
Okay.
And update everybody.
And I apologize to the board. This, I submit my presentation, about a week and a half in advance. This particular slide you do not have in your packets, but I just created that, based on last week. And I can get these figures to Alice to get to the board.
Okay.
The Phase 4 project, as permitting is ongoing, it does sound like the permitting is moving forward, and you imagine it's very nice sand. There's not, an offshore bar area that the agencies have to review. It's just, the agencies are very slow. But it does seem like it is moving forward, and the project is happening, and it's kind of as planned. We knew it was going to be. The permitting was going to take some time. It probably will be about 300,000 cubic yards now. Looking at based on that 325 was up to 325,000, and it looks like basically based on the grant that it'll be about and the bids that we got. It's interesting. It's not interesting. It's just different. FEMA, when we have a FEMA mitigation project, they will talk about volume, and they'll say, 630,000 cubic yards, 15,000 cubic yards, and then, obviously we competitively bid it and we send it out, and then they will pay that cost. With this state grant, it's got, it's fixed at 10.5 million. And so then we have to get these prices of, basically estimated costs on the volume. And then so the volume, so with FEMA, we have a volume set, and the price can vary a little bit. With this state grant, the price is set, and we have to vary the volume to kind of match the price. The county beach access, access for the dune rehabilitation, this is the same regulators that visited the Phase 5 shoreline a few weeks ago, and we're very happy with that. They went here, they stopped by here, and they saw gravel in the rock, in the dune that in the area that kind of was repaired, just following Hurricane Ian and Nicole and the other storms that happened. So they did not reach out and tell us that until I reached out to them and said, we want to start this project, because we are actually ready to start the project this week. Emma called me and said there's gravelly sand in the dunes, and you have to remove that before you put nice sand in that dune. So we were out there getting the kind of an estimate on the gravelly sand that is out there, and we're probably going to have to remove it. You can either screen it or remove it, and removing it does sound easier and less costly than screening it. And it does seem like it's based on what we looked at, it looks like maybe about 15 truckloads, but obviously we're going to measure that with survey data and really kind of get an accurate volume of what needs to be taken out. And this will be an extra cost. Getting rid of the gravelly sand was not part of the original scope. And I've discussed this with Alice, and Alice, I guess, and then it is interesting that the CAMA personnel, they know the town of North Topsail Beach really well. They know me really well, and apparently they don't really interact with the county much. So it's a shame that this happened, and it's not the town's fault at all.
So-
it's just just another issue with this beach access,
So-
county beach access.
So Fran, let me stop you there, because this needs to be done this season. So I'm hearing additional cost estimates, I'm hearing other things that are happening. When will we have all the information we need to continue this project?
This week.
Okay. And then
This
do
week,
we have to update, do we have to update,
initial-
Fran, wait, what I'm asking for is what are the steps to move this forward? So this week, you're gonna have an estimate for the costs, and then do we have to update the permit?
No, the permit is fine. It just, the material has to be, the gravelly sand has to be removed.
Okay, so once we have the estimate of the cost and we, as a board, determine how we're moving forward with those costs, then you're able to just call the contractor back and start again?
Yes, I've already had discussions with the contractor about removing the gravelly sand,
Okay,
and initial estimates are about $12,000 to remove the gravelly sand, but I will, we will have them, accurate here. That's just an estimate, but that just gives you a rough idea of how much sand we think has to be removed. It's about 15 truckloads.
and then I have one other question on that, and this was actually Mr. Fontana's question. Can we use that sand somewhere else in parking lots or anything like that? If they're removing it, where are they removing it to?
I did not get, it was CM Mitchell, and CM Mitchell just said they were gonna take it. And so I do think it's usable sand. It's not, it's nice quality sand with some gravel in it.
Well, I guess my
do think
question
that-
is, though, we have a lot of parking lots that are our gravel and sand. So I guess, Alice, if you could follow up and see, can we use it somewhere?
We can look at that, but I know we've been bringing in aggregate right now to try to fill in to, to tighten it up, so we don't necessarily want more sand in the
Okay.
parking lots.
Okay.
I'm waiting at this point for the final estimate, so that I can reach back out to the county to give them an update. I did make a call to them this morning. Just as an FYI, I sent them an email on Monday morning when the contractor showed up unexpectedly, because I've asked several times for the schedule, so that could be communicated, which we did not receive, and then he showed up on Monday, because I did work with the county to remove all the lattice work from the building that you see. So they showed up on Monday, and I did give the county a heads up at that point that they had showed up and that we were working with them right now, and I've tried to reach back out this morning to just advise them of what's transpired with what the state had said with the rocks in the sand. But I need the final cost estimate so I can have a full discussion with them on the next steps. I do know that there is some money left over from the estimate that was provided, and it was for the project was $130,022. There is money that's available that we could request that they allocated towards us.
Okay.
So there's some leeway there, but again, I need to know what that estimate is before I could have a full conversation with the
Okay.
county.
All right, sounds like it's moving forward. Thank you.
Joanne?
Yes, sir.
Is there no way to separate the gravel from the sand?
Yes, yes, there is. When I spoke with CM Mitchell, they said they could, but their gravel separating machine, it would be more expensive to mobilize that and bring that here for that small amount of material. So they proposed that the cheaper way would be to just remove the sand completely. So it is, the two different options are screening it or just removing it completely. And CM Mitchell indicated that removing it completely would be cheaper.
Okay, so I would want to know how much cheaper, because we could use that gravel. We can put that gravel down in the parking lot.
And the sand.
Okay.
The question I have is more local, Fran, but just bear with us a second. The coordination, when the county decided to get that sandy dune soil out of their parking lot and put it back in the dune line, I guess my question would be, did they talk to you, town manager, about their plans to do that, or they just did it? And use that in your justification, maybe, going back to the county, saying why there's additional cost to restore the dune now that they basically interfered with your operation, your plan.
Well, we noticed when they started pushing it after the fact, so when we noticed them doing that, of course, the rocks were already they were already scraping. So, like I said, we'll work through this. I don't see it as I don't see that it's gonna be an obstacle to work through it with them.
Okay. You can keep going, Fran.
And as Alice mentioned, Alice drove by, and noticed the cleanup and did not think it was, the normal protocol. And we had a few folks with TI Coastal also relayed to me the same information that it did not really seem like it was a standard cleanup where you're putting that material back on the dune line without screening it. So, yeah.
Okay.
And then just to recap, the Army Corps Intercoastal Waterway and Channel dredging, that is ongoing. The Hurricane Dorian Phase 1 FEMA Category G project, which is outside of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Cobra Zone, that's 15,000 cubic yards, and it's near Topsail Reef. And then we did have, as mentioned, there was 45,000 cubic yards is permitted This is near the inlet, so the one problem is this, where the shorebirds, the month of April is difficult to work in. Basically, CAMA told me we could work in this to about April 14, about halfway through April, but they would not allow us to work through the last couple of weeks of April because shorebirds like the inlet so much. So that is a little different than the other permits along the beach. The New River Inlet Management Master Plan, with that, we had a meeting, a few weeks ago with Mickey, and it was that the additional modeling was completed, and the analysis, the analysis by me has been completed, and that project is moving forward, as Alice mentioned. County Beach Access 4 is in phase 3. We just went over that. The state grant in phase 4, and kind of the Beach Access 4 in phase 3, and then state grant in phase 4. The phase 5 beach nourishment, Alice mentioned another number, about 100 and something thousand. That 220,000 placed includes what was placed last year and this year by ST Wooten, and then it's about 220,000. And there would go about 80,000 remain, maybe about 70,000 actually, because then I did this, this presentation, I developed this PowerPoint a couple of weeks ago. And then the second tranche of the truck haul from starting at Gray Street working south, we're going to be late February, and that's pretty much as we proposed. And then continue working with Caitlin and Finance and DEC Associates regarding the FEMA and state funded projects, and just kind of continue with the permitting coordination on all projects as needed.
So Fran, I of course still have 2 more questions, and they're on time frames. So I just want to make sure it's clear to those folks listening, and also maybe we can add these to the slide. But the phase 1 time frame, where we're talking about 15 to 45,000 cubic yards, you're saying by April 1st. Is that realistically going to be done this year? Or is that a 2024? Yes?
Yeah, they can do, right now they're doing about 15,000 cubic yards a week. So, and I think they can keep that same, productivity going, even though it's a little farther haul, but yeah, 15,000 cubic yards a week.
But it's not gonna, I think we talked about this, if it's not a truck haul and additional equipment has to be set up at Topsail Reef to do it the other way, is it still realistically going to happen this month? Because it is February.
Yeah, this month probably not, but, and then it is, basically ST Wooten will be finishing up their operations at the end of, near the end of this month, and so they can pretty much, that equipment can get moved right up in here. So it would probably be March, and then, those couple weeks in April that were, April 14.
I thought you said we have to be out of there by April 1st.
That is the permit, but when I was speaking with the CAMA folks, and especially when Alice mentioned before working into May, you can get an extension. And
Okay.
the extension, the 2-week extension is very standard.
Okay.
And as you recall, 2 years ago, I think we had an extension. Yep,
Yeah. Okay. And then the timing for the phase 4 project, it looks to me like that will be 2024, correct?
Yes, it will start November 2023, November 16th. That will be active hauling, but yes, the 23-24 next year.
Can you apply for the extension now for phase 1? Fran?
Usually they want you to have the project, going, and then then they see that you're making progress, and then they'll say, okay, yes, that's fine. And I've pretty much been assured from CAMA that they would allow, a 2-week extension. I can bring that up again, but I do think they will wait, and, they typically like to wait, till closer to that extension.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Fran, a couple follow-on questions. Thanks again for getting that 4-year modeling data analyzed and to our third party. consultant who's working with the Army Corps to get chapters 4, 5, and 6 into the EIS packet. So we appreciate that. But one follow-up, as we think about long-term strategic planning and following on that EIS, the board asked you a couple months ago to do a cost update on the preferred option for that EIS study. Just a reminder, and our new beach committee is going to be talking about the finances and strategic plans this year as we meet month by month. So if you get a spare minute, if you could get us an updated expected cost, let's say $225 to construct a terminal groin.
Yep,
Phil,
I have done some research on that, and I will kind of finalize it and get it to you.
all right, thanks a lot.
Any additional questions for Fran? Okay, well, thank you, Fran. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
All right,
I
moving,
would just ask that he
Yes, sir.
stays online for when we get to continuing business in case there's further questions.
sounds good.
Of course.
We're going to move right into continuing business. The first item was the Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Committee advocate goals, and we did talk about these at our last meeting, but they had just come out the night before, so I had asked if we could hold on our formal approval of them. I certainly do not have any issues with them. I don't know if any board members have any questions or issues. Then I don't think we need to go through them again, unless you both feel we need to.
Alderman Lynn gave a pretty good synopsis of the legislative goals that you and he presented to the board and how they fit in with.
Yeah, no, I don't think we have additional discussion on this
Do
one,
we-
Tom, unless you want to speak.
No, I
Looks like you
don't. We beat it to death last time. Do we need a motion to approve at our level?
I believe we need a motion to approve, yes,
So moved. I'll make that motion, that
Do I
we
have a-
approve the Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Commission goals for 2023 as presented.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next item would be Mayor Pro Tem Benson on BISAC.
All right, thanks, Mayor. Just a couple things, really. You've had a chance, hopefully, to look over our January meeting report that was in your packet. Most of the items under the manager's update, she's already covered again today, so we can skip over that. There's really two things that I want to bring to the board's attention. The first is in the committee organization. We have changed our monthly meeting day time from the fourth Tuesday to the third Tuesday of each month, except January and November. And that is to give the chair of the committee a chance to write this report for the board, because after some committee meetings, the report to the board had less than 24 hours to turn around, or you were going to have to, it was going to be 5 weeks, out of date till the following monthly board meeting. So that's why we're changing the date, and everybody concerned with that committee and our coastal advisor is okay with the third Tuesday, and I believe that meeting schedule has already been posted on the committee webpage. The other thing I wanted to just mention briefly was that the committee discussed the goal that the board gave the committee, which, and I will read here, review the current beach plan and with the input of the beach engineer, identify the issues the town needs to address. We spent a lot of time discussing this goal and some of the components that go along with it. And so in the report, you'll see some of these components that we flushed out. One thing that we need to be working on, in addition to our strategic plan, is a 30-year beach inlet management plan. This is something that the Division of Coastal Management wants each community, each beach community to have this 30-year plan, and it helps a lot in permitting, because you don't have to go back from scratch to seek permits with DCM and CAMA. So At some point in this year, we're gonna need to start working on that 30-year beach inlet management plan. And let me just say that it's really different than the overall strategic plan for beach management, because the 30-year plan is actually prepared by a professional engineering firm. It's not something that the committee would prepare. So there is an expense involved, and we've already talked about this last year in our board meetings, and we actually had some funds put in the budget for this current fiscal year to begin working on that engineered beach management plan. So that's one of the components of the goal that the board gave the committee. There are a couple other goals, but one I want to emphasize is education. We want our community to understand why we're doing what we're doing and how we're going about it. We have fact sheets on several different things, but as we work through this EIS, it's going to be very important to keep our community informed about the process and how it's going to impact each section of the beach in town. So education, you will see recommendations coming from the BISAC committee on how the board can educate the community on our shoreline protection activities. We also plan to do some self-training so that we have, the committee is more informed on beach management issues, so that is part of the component that the board assigned to the goal. And finally, we would really like to help the board and the town find sources of grant funding outside of the Coastal Storm Mitigation Fund and the Shallow Draft Inlet and Aquatic Weed Fund to support our shoreline activities, both the beach as well as sound side. So those were some of the components of what we're going to be working on this coming year. I don't know if anyone has questions, but I'll try to answer them at this time.
The only one that I have some concerns about is the finding funding sources outside of the state shallow inlet and aquatic weed fund, because we've talked a lot about if there's going to be any interaction with other government agencies or anything of that nature, that really should be coming from the board or our town manager. So my concern would be representatives from the BISAC committee reaching out to other state representatives or government agencies or anything like that to find funding.
No, that's not the intent of this goal at all. The intent of this goal is to look at funding programs that are available online. There is no liaison implied at all between this committee and the funding agencies. It's just helping the town manager find other sources of funding for.
But then there's, okay, we've just been down this rabbit hole a lot in many years where, you know, somebody sees something that might look like a good grant that then is submitted to the town manager to investigate, and then those are hours and hours that are taken up. So from my perspective, if those suggestions are coming from Mr. Gibson, I think that will be a better use of time between him and Ms. Darian. That's just my opinion.
Well, no doubt he would have input when he's advising the BISAC committee, so yeah.
Well, I'm just
He's
going
a
on
part
record
of the
that I
BISAC committee.
have some issues with that
Mayor?
line item. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, I sat in on the BISAC committee meeting last month in the absence of Alderman Grant. And one of the points that I made, I think at least twice, was that anything that the BISAC committee does needs to assist the board and needs to assist the manager and staff and not end up creating work specifically for the manager and staff. And I know when I talked about it, there were lots of head nods around the table, both during the meeting, and then there was a few of us stood around and visited afterwards. I don't think it's a problem, but it's something that they need to be mindful of, that their job is not to create work, but to help get work done.
Well, that goes into my next item. I know we're preparing for the budget meetings, and this would be something that I think from a committee perspective, we need to give some thought to the impact on our staff. I know that I'm thinking of the concert coming up, that certainly has an impact on our staff. This committee, I don't know that we've planned on any staff commitment or activity, but reading through what you've all got here, it sounds like there may be. So there has to be some discussion on that, and we have to be able to plan for that. Any other comments? Okay. All right, we're gonna move on to Phase 1 nourishment. Ms. Darian?
Thank you. Okay, as we've been discussing previously and earlier today, we're nearing wrapping up with the Army Corps project, and we're thinking February 9th from what we've been told. I just want the town to be positioned and be ready to move forward with the FEMA project at minimum with the 15,000 cubic yards that are reimbursable, which is why I asked Fran to have the estimates from ST Wooten for today's meeting so that the board can consider and at minimum give approval to move forward on that. As we stated before, the cost is $40 per cubic yard plus a $5,000 mobilization fee. So at minimum with being able to go with 15,000 cubic yards, it'll be $605,000, which again is FEMA reimbursable. A touch base on the amount that's been permitted, the 45,000 cubic yards that's been permitted, that would be if the board feels compelled to discuss or consider going forward with any additional cubic yards. The cost for the would be for the 30,000 is $1.2 million, as I stated earlier, which would have to come out of Fund 30. I provided a breakdown to the board of the $1.5 million state allocation that the town received a while ago, and gave some background on that. These were funds that's been appropriated from the North Carolina General Assembly, so it was not a grant, it was an appropriation, which was originally to be used in Phase 2. If everyone recalls, this goes back some time over the years, but the town worked through language that was updated, which was early 2022, from only being able to be used in Phase 2, but also to have the option to use in the remaining 4 phases. From there, I worked with our lobbyists last year to get a technical correction to the statute to remove language that stated that the town had to match monies. That was incorrectly put in there. We successfully had that removed, and that technical correction which was approved on March 17th of 2022. Of the $1.5 million that was allocated, the town spent $280,942.67 to extend the Dune project last year, which leaves $1,219,057.33 remaining of those funds. So the board can consider what to do with those additional funds if you choose to, but at minimum, I would recommend that we move forward with the 15,000 so that that's ready, and that Fran can get moving on that. As soon as the Army Corps is pulling out, we could be prepared to come in with minimum 15,000 cubic yards. So the board can discuss that. You can open that up for discussion now if you choose.
So I'm just gonna give my take on it, and then maybe we just go around to each board member. I feel that we have been advertising this full placement of sand in front of the Topsail Reef condo for as long as we've been doing these updates this past year. I don't think that 15,000 cubic yards is really going to make much of a difference at all. I would suggest, since we have the funds available, that would be my recommendation, that we place the full 45,000 that's permitted there, and because we all know it's going to move a little bit, so it should benefit not just Topsail Reef, but also surrounding neighborhoods. I mean, Dolphin Shores is having a lot of erosion issues as well. So that's, I mean, that would be my take, and Connie, I'll start with you.
I would agree with you, Mayor. I believe, like Alice said, we should immediately start after the Army Corps project, get on with that 15,000 cubic yards. And then continue. I do feel like it'll benefit down further too.
I think there was an assumption all along that we were gonna do that, and the 45 was the magic number, as I recall. And I don't think it was really clearly articulated that we weren't going to do the balance. And I think, I agree that the conditions up there are such that, particularly with the balance of the state money that we have, that was to be used specifically for beach issues, that we should go ahead and press on with this.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'm agreeing here with the consensus so far. The main thing we were trying to do was figure out how far the Army Corps project was going to get, and it doesn't look like they're going to get as far as they were originally telling us, based on what they've been doing the last week or so. And then it was a little bit technical comment that Fran made during his report, that you can only put one layer of sand down during one renourishment cycle, and so we're talking about coming in and putting Dorian sand on top of the core sand. I don't maybe know that we're going to be doing that, apparently. That's, I think, a good reason for maybe Fran to weigh in. So basically, the template's going to be from, at least the current situation is, the Corps has got sand behind building 1, and that's pretty much it. So the Dorian project's going to start more or less building 2, and if we use the state allocation to add to bring it up to the 45,000 cubic yards, it's going to work on from building 2 or wherever the Corps finishes, because of the limitation of not being able to put a second layer of sand on top of a layer that was already placed in the same year, from building 2 on down through the building 8.
Fran,
So
could you
I'm
please
supportive
clarify?
I'm supportive of
Yeah,
using the
yes.
allocation.
That permit condition is just for our permit for the 45,000 cubic yards. It does not, the Army Corps of Engineers permit is completely separate. So, yeah, that isn't an issue.
Right.
So Fran, we could put Dorian and the state allocated sand on top of the core sand, depending on how
Correct.
the survey works out when the core is finished?
Correct.
Okay.
Because in my opinion, the Corps project was not a beach nourishment project where this is.
It's not.
Before we move on, you're right, it's a
Can you turn-
navigation project.
Turn your thing on.
You're correct in that it is not a beach project, it's a navigation project, but reviewing the minutes for this meeting, remembering that I specifically asked last month about commingling of that sand, not from a perspective of permit, but from a perspective of the granularity. And there was no issue at that time with us putting our sand on top of the coarse sand. So I would have been surprised to find out that there was today.
Alderman Fontana?
Yeah, I think since we have the money from the state and there's no local match to it, it'd behoove us to do as much as we can with it.
So what I need is a motion to authorize the town's contractor to move forward with the placement of sand for the full 45,000 cubic yards.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion.
Yes, sir.
The limitation is $1.2 million that's available, not the 45,000, because Fran was saying we got the problem versus volume at $40 a cubic yard
Right, so
versus the amount of money that's actually available.
It's only 30,000.
No.
But there's a
no,
reimbursement too.
for the first 40, for the first 15,000, that's reimbursable, that's 600,000.
She has the answer, I can tell.
She
Yeah,
does? She said
the
it
1
earlier.
million, the 1,200,000 is what it will cost, and we have 1,219,057 remaining. So, we have available funds
For the
for
thirty
that.
thousand extra
We have the
cubic
money.
yards.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're two different buckets of money.
I knew she'd
And
have
this
the
is
answer.
not, and again, this is not a grant,
Right.
it's an appropriation, so, there's, matching funds don't come into play here, it's an appropriation, from the state.
And I would have one question, and maybe Fran, you could answer this. If we approve it, can they get the 30,000 cubic yards put out before the middle of May?
April first.
Middle of April.
Correct me, April first.
I will ask them on the schedule.
Well, I thought April 14th was the area by the inlet, but it was turtle season when you go beyond for the other part of the beach.
In phase one, that close to the inlet, they consider that, close enough to the inlet, in kind of the quote unquote inland hazard area. And we're right there, and that was the old inland hazard area that was on that figure. But, for that phase one Topsail Reef project, it's April 1 with the, April 1 is the deadline, but they're definitely open to an extension to April 14, and then possibly even a little bit later, depending on, how the project's going and that sort of thing. But
Could they,
go ahead.
could they get all the sand out? I mean, between, it just doesn't seem like we have that much time.
Yeah, you're correct. It's going to be tight, but I do think, as long as we don't have any, really bad weather or some other condition. And then this is also kind of contingent on the Army Corps of Engineers project finishing in a timely manner. As Alice has mentioned, if that keeps sliding, that's going to make our window even tighter. And then this is all contingent on if they come up with, if that Army Corps of Engineers project brings up a bunch of rock or a bunch of shell that requires some sort of, mitigation, then that could also be an issue. But, so it is a bit of a moving target.
Okay, so I have a motion and I have a second. Are we all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Well, we're gonna, thank you, Fran. Appreciate your time today, sir.
Sure.
We're gonna move on to new business, and Mr. Aaron, we wanted to talk about the music festival a little bit.
Yes. So, the committee has met, as you know, and one of the things that I've been working through with Brian is what action the board will need to take today to allow a third-party vendor to sell alcohol, at Richard Peters Park on April 1st, on the day of the concert. So I'm gonna turn that over to him.
Thank you, Alice. The day we talked about it, we couldn't access American Legal to find the exact ordinance that prohibits sale of alcohol. Do we have that?
We've had problems
That
with
section.
with pulling American Legal.
Okay. To the extent we have an ordinance that prohibits the sale of alcohol on town property.
We do.
We can pass a resolution to suspend that ordinance under certain parameters. And I would recommend that if you want to allow a third-party vendor to come in to this event to sell alcohol, we pass a resolution to suspend the ordinance for that event. Alice and I have discussed, if that occurs, the vendor would have to have, of course, all ABC permits, commercial general liability policy that would name the town as additional insured, et cetera, and whatever crowd control measures that may be required. So that would be, that would keep the ordinance in place, but you're going to suspend it for this event for a vendor.
Well, I guess I'm just wondering why we have that ordinance in place anyway. Because I think that,
Predates me.
as you had mentioned, Brian, there's all this criteria that a vendor would have to meet. We'd have to approve anybody selling alcohol. I'm just thinking that we as a board have the desire to hold additional events in the future. And I guess I don't see the need for the resolution if there's a process that it has to follow to get approved.
So is the resolution, or is the regulation there to keep people from, like, small groups that use the park, that arrange for use of the park? Is that why it's there? So they can't bring coolers in with alcohol in them? Is that the reason
I don't
for,
know.
for the regulation?
I mean, historically, a lot of towns have it to where you can't bring alcohol onto town-owned property for just liability reasons and to make sure it's peaceful out there. If we're going to go the route of rescinding the ordinance, I think we need some time, because what we need to do is we need to enact in its place a mechanism that, are you going to vest the discretion to grant those permits to the town manager, or are you going to want each on a permit by permit basis to come back to the town board?
Well, I guess my desire, and maybe it's not to dissolve the ordinance, but I want to make it easy whenever we have town-sponsored events that we're able to do this, and that Alice has the authority to be able to approve, either whether it's a food truck vendor, because we also have an ordinance that says we can't have food truck vendors too. So we have to look at both of those. And I think anytime we're having a town-sponsored event, that we should have the ability to be able to move forward with that easily without it.
We can modify the existing ordinance to accept town-sponsored events.
Can we do that? I think that's the easiest thing to do. Alice, do you?
But today, we don't have that in front of us, so
Right.
if you want to move forward today, it would be to suspend the ordinance for the concert, and then staff
Okay.
and I can come back with maybe a more comprehensive.
But I believe we
Framework.
have to suspend two ordinances. One would be for the sale of alcohol, but I also believe, and Tom, I could be wrong, you might remember this, I believe we have an ordinance that doesn't allow us to have food trucks on town-owned property too.
That I'm not aware of.
I think
Okay.
so.
Do we?
I
You
think,
would
yeah.
know. The other option here is to not necessarily suspend the portions of our ordinance, but to provide a mechanism where they can be approved by the manager case by case.
I'm fine with that too.
And then we've got a little more control over it. And, I clearly understand that, our manager is always looking for more things to do because she doesn't have enough on her plate. I say that jokingly, but then we have control over it. We haven't just completely washed our hands of it, but we still have a little bit of control to it.
I would say whatever is I believe we're all saying the same thing as far as our desire to be able to hold events, be able to serve alcohol at those events, and also have food trucks. So whatever is the easiest mechanism to move forward with that, I believe you have board concurrence to do that, whether that's suspending it for this specific event or providing town manager the ability to approve them. I'm open to whatever's easier.
I recommend a motion to suspend the alcohol ban ordinance and the food truck ban ordinance on town property for this event.
Okay.
If that motion passes, then all we need is a consensus of the board to direct staff to come back with another framework to accommodate what we're talking about.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
There's too many microphones on right now.
I'll make the motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. So we have the motion to suspend for this current event for both the alcohol truck, but also for the food truck.
I just had one question. When we say alcohol, are we talking about just beer and wine, or are you talking about all forms of alcohol?
My understanding is, and my recommendation is that we bring in a third-party vendor, and depending on what level permits, now that's a policy decision if you want to limit it to just beer and wine, or allow, what do they call it, spirits, with ABC and everything, they call it spirits, but at any rate, that's a policy decision, so if you want to limit it to beer and wine, or just beer, or
So basically, we're opening it up to be our decision moving forward. So when we get that far with what the different sponsors and options are from the committee who's trying to move forward with the music festival, we can bring that back to the board.
And to clarify too, the motion was to suspend the ordinance as it applies to the town, not to the public.
Correct. All right, the next item on the agenda was just some clarification on the Board of Elections for the upcoming election in 2023.
Excuse me, I did have another, can I ask a question about the music festival? How are they gonna be handling traffic control? How do we?
Well, we're
limit-
gonna go through, I have some
Oh,
updates when I
okay.
give my
Thank
update, and we don't have answers to everything yet, but
Okay, thank you.
Chad has ideas back there. He's gonna be driving golf carts. So we're gonna move on to the next item, which is the, election for 2023. There was some confusion, who's up now, who's up later. We've got 2-year terms, 4-year terms, folks that have filled seats, and when do they go up for election. So I'm gonna turn it over to Miss Avery, I think, to start, or is it Brian who wants to lead this?
The three of us talked about it last week, essentially, absent a charter provision to the contrary. Sorry, thank you, Mr. Benson. Absent a charter provision to the contrary, the general statutes state that unless you're right on top of an election, when you fill a vacancy, the person that fills the vacancy, that seat's up for election at the next municipal election. And so the 2 vacancies would be up, and Mayor, I believe your term is up as well. So those 2 vacancies, as well as your seats, up for election this year.
And I did want to bring up one thing, as it wouldn't impact this year's election from the mayor perspective, but I really think that the mayor's term being only 2 years, whether that's me or somebody else come November, it's very difficult. You start a project, you don't even get to see it really completed when you look at how long we've been working on things like the fire station and just getting Mr. Peters Park back and all of those things. So I would like the board to consider having the mayor's seat also be a 4-year position. I don't know, what you guys think. I haven't talked to anybody about this other than bringing it up now. So I don't know if you've given it any thought, but the 2-year transition, if the mayor's seat changes every 2 years, is difficult, I think.
Brian, what's the general situation in North Carolina?
I should have inventoried the towns that I'm affiliated with. I've seen, there have been at least 2, I believe, that have went from a 2-year term to a 4-year term. There's policy reasons for both, but I do think that 24 months is a pretty quick time frame to see most of these type of projects through to fruition. So I can inventory the towns if you'd like and bring that back. I can't give you a definitive answer as I sit here now, Mr. Benson.
Yes, sir.
There was discussion here in this town about this probably back 2007, 2008-ish, when Don Martin was the mayor. And there was some issue why they couldn't do it, or they decided against it, and I honestly cannot remember what the issue was, but of course it was a whole different group then and a whole different timeline, but I do recall there was discussion about it at one point in the past. My only comment.
And around the same time frame, about Topsail Beach was going through the same issue. And in their case, they were seeking to really, I think, put a clamp on the responsibilities of the mayor, and that's why they were going 2 years. But it was right around that same time that they were all doing it.
Does anybody on the board have an issue if Brian looks into it a little bit more and gives us some feedback regarding a 4-year mayor term? And again, it doesn't impact me being up for election this term, it still would be up. But moving forward with everything that we've got on our strategic and tactical plan, I just think for North Topsail Beach it makes sense.
I could add one more comment. I think at some point in time, as we discuss this, we need to go back to the UNC School of Government Coates Cannon blog and review the roles of the mayor in a council manager form of government. Because they're pretty specific. And basically the mayor is the face of the town, and the mayor presides over the meetings. And I get that mayors, and this is not personal, I'm just throwing it out as a, I think you've done a great job. Served with you, I served with Dan, I thought he did a great job too. But I think we need to just every once in a while kind of remind ourselves what our roles and functions are as we sit up at this table.
Well, and I don't disagree with that at all, Alderman Leonard, and I think that in all of the different Board of Alderman years I was prior to mayor, this board is doing the best job I've ever seen staying in our lanes. I do agree with that, so.
I don't think it's a bad idea, not just looking at the mayor, but looking at the board itself. This is a manager-led town, and I think that, to use Tom's phrasing, maybe everybody knowing what they, or maybe it was your phrasing, knowing what we all have to do to stay in our lanes and allow the town to function as it should.
So I think, Brian, what we're saying is if you wouldn't mind doing some investigation on that and bringing it back to the board, then we can have some additional conversation about it.
And just for clarity, I'll do a survey of coastal towns, their mayoral seat terms. I'd prefer not to weigh into the policy pros and cons, because I think I'd be getting outside of my lane at that point, but I think some of them have already been stated here. So, other than a survey, is there anything else you want me to look at?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, and then the next item on the agenda is the 2023 Washington meeting, and I'll let Ms. Darian go through this, but basically what we wanted to do is talk about what we have planned for these upcoming meetings so that we can ask for a motion that from the board that everybody's in agreement with who's attending and appoint our representatives. The same thing we do for the TISPC meetings, but we thought it was important to bring it up. Yes.
Do you have a motion on the resolution?
Oh, I thought we did. I'm sorry. We skipped right over that. Thank you very much. So the resolution was to basically approve. It's basically the not the mayor part of it. It was just the resolution to approve what we have in place right now for the term expirations of our aldermen.
To approve the resolution to the Board of Elections as presented.
Do we have a motion?
I'll motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy. Okay, Alice, Washington, D.C.
The 2023 Washington DC federal meetings, Mayor Smith, Chairman. Sorry. The 2023 Washington DC federal meetings, Chairman Smith from the TISPC, Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Commission, has been communicating with Alderman Leonard, of course, as our legislative representative on the board, about attendance at these upcoming meetings. We've got the in-person meetings with congressional representatives, FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers to take place in DC the week of the March 20th. Also, in the same time in Washington, DC is the American Shore and Beach Preservation Association Coastal Summit, which is taking place March 21st through 23rd. There was discussion back and forth on this is the first time that we'll be going in person in recent years because of COVID and whatever reasons in the past. But so this will be the first one we're attending in recent times. So there was discussion back and forth on how many people can represent. And now is my understanding, and I'll let Tom elaborate on, I believe we've got 3 that can go at this point in time.
We were allocated 2. Originally, there were 6. Former Congressman McIntyre wanted to limit the Capitol Hill group to a total of 6 representatives, allocated as 2 per each of the 3 Topsail Island towns. Only 1 is going from Topsail Beach, which Chris Gibson is going as their second person. Surf City originally only had 1 going, and then they raised it to 2. We were going to get their 3rd spot, and when Surf City ended up with 2, I went back to Steve Smith, who went back to Congressman McIntyre with a request that North Topsail Beach could send 3, because it's my desire that the manager go with me, and the mayor would like to go, which I think is also a good idea. So we need that 3rd spot. Steve came back, said that he talked to Congressman, and they could accommodate that. So we have 3 openings, and my recommendation for the openings would be the manager, the mayor, and myself.
I'll make a motion that the manager, the mayor, and Alderman Leonard are representatives to the congressional meeting and the ASBP meeting in Washington.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next item is open forum. Do we have anybody who signed up? Anybody who'd like to speak? Yes, Ms. Meyer, come on up.
Hi, Susan Meyer,
Address.
2224 New River Inlet Road, Unit 138. I just wanted to thank you all for approving the extra sand at Topsail Reef. I've been after it for years, and I am so pleased that you all were able to find the funds and are going to move forward with this. And I just wanted to thank you.
Anybody else?
Don't look at me, Joanne, I've already said my thing.
Okay, all right. Then we will move into the attorney's report.
I have no report other than what I pointed out earlier with respect to Monday night's variance hearing.
Okay, and then we're gonna move into the mayor's report. I know that we have been very busy lately. Ms. Darian went through quite a bit of it at her report. We've also kicked off, Connie and I have kicked off the committee for, specifically just for the concert. It's not expanded outside of that. And Alice took on some of the follow-ups, one being the alcohol sales. I have spoken to several potential sponsors. We haven't really started advertising for sponsors yet, but I have 3 that are wanting to do it, and one of them happens to be a Corona person, like he works for Corona. So hopefully we'll have a Corona truck there. We'll see. That's moving forward. We still haven't figured out all the parking, so we are working through that. We did want to get the vendor on site, because looking at the beautiful artwork back there, we have a ton of space. But the committee was struggling a little bit. Where do we set up this, that, or the other thing? How many food trucks can we fit? How many, beer trucks can we fit? Where are the bathrooms? So one thing we wanted to do was see if we could request the band representative come back and kind of do a site plan with us. So we'll be working through those items and bring back more to you guys as a board. Right now, as I said, we had our initial meeting. We've all taken some follow-ups, and we need to just get back at it. There have been just so many pressing things right now that have been going on. Connie, did I miss anything?
Nope, you did well.
Okay, that is the mayor's update.
Can I just ask one thing? Because I went to the Chamber of Commerce meeting, and I believe that they're under the understanding that they will be handling tickets. Is that correct?
I think Alice had a conversation with Scott. That was one thing they had volunteered to do for us. I wasn't sure if their software was gonna work.
Yeah, we have not got all the answers to the questions on that platform, but I did reinforce that our desire to work with them for the ticket sales. And then, also potentially, were they sponsoring to look at sponsoring a truck as well, which they have interest in. So they've also since reached out to me, along with the other two managers, to schedule reoccurring meetings, monthly meetings as well. So I'll at least have a face-to-face with them once a month,
Okay, good.
as well, to just, fill in any gaps where there might be, just to help with the communication.
Thank you. So all three towns along with the chamber?
Yeah, the three-town
Four
manager,
town.
well, I'm sorry, so Holly Ridge, Surf City, Topsail, and North Topsail Beach.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna start with Ms. Plettle.
Oh, I want to thank everyone for coming out or watching from home. It's really appreciated. I want to thank Alice and the staff and for everything they do. A lot of work goes into this running of the town. I'm very pleased with the audit. I think it went really well, and I think that that's something the town should be really proud of. If you haven't been down to Phase 5 to see the sand that's on the beach, it is really incredible. It looks great. It's really good. Boy, I'm just not being able to speak very well today, but it's all going very well, and I just want to thank everybody, and I'm done.
Alderman Leonard.
I attended the NC Byway Board of Directors meeting on January 17th. We established the spring conference dates and location. It'll be May 11th and 12th, and it'll again be up in Emerald Isle at the Islander Inn. There'll be more to follow on that. I am sure that at some point we'll be asked for sponsorship, and so we might as well plan for that now. Attended the winter event at Camp Lejeune on January 20th, along with Alderman Fontana. It was well attended. There were lots of local folks there. A couple of county commissioners, the new sheriff and the old sheriff, and several others. It was a good event in terms of being able to get out and get circulated around and talk to other folks that do the same thing at their levels that we do at ours. Attended the ECC, the Eastern Carolina Council Legislative Breakfast, along with Mike and Alice on January 23rd. We had met with State Senator Lazara, introduced the manager to him, and we had some good discussion, and he again reiterated his same question that he's asked me a couple of times in the past: what can I do to help North Topsail Beach? So working on trying to hammer down a meeting with him, hopefully here rather than in Raleigh. And that's all the events I have, but I want to, at this point, give a big thank you to our manager. I think you're doing a great job. I know seems like every time we turn around, somebody's handing you something else that needs to be done. And sometimes there's just no light at the end of that tunnel, and when there is a light at the end of the tunnel, it's a headlight from a locomotive coming the other way. And you're doing a great job, and I appreciate everything that you're doing for the town. Mm-hmm. And that concludes my report, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thanks, Mayor. I'll second what Alderman Plettle and Alderman Leonard have communicated already. Also, in addition to town manager's performance, again, point to the great job that our department heads, public safety, fire department, yada, 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 do for the town. We don't appreciate them as much as we should. They are there for us, and we feel safe in our community because of them. One of the things that we accomplished at that Eastern Carolina Council session with the state legislators was to hear what their big issues are they're trying to address from Eastern North Carolina, the state legislature level that applies to the whole state. But one point that they made in their presentation was that our representative might be representing 5 eastern counties, whereas my old home county, Wake County, Raleigh, North Carolina, has 5 state senators for Wake County, and there are 5 state senators for all of eastern North Carolina. So it's a numbers game based on population. But anyway, they have lots of serious statewide problems they're addressing, but the thing of the meeting was they were really willing to listen to what our local concerns were. Okay, and just a bit of information, if you've been following the Topsail Island Shrine Protection Commission, they have adopted a every other month meeting schedule, so they'll not be meeting in January. They did not meet in January, and their next meeting is, I think, February 24th. So they've gone to like a bi-monthly meeting schedule. That completes my report, Mayor.
Alderman Fontana?
Yeah, I know we're already in February, but I did want to echo, I heard a lot of positive comments about the Christmas tree that we had out here this year. I think it was really a very, very nice sort of welcoming to North Topsail Beach. When you come over the bridge, you see the tree. So I think the town staff needs to be commended for the tree. I also want to mention that I was along with the manager at the open house for Share the Table. And it's a agency that provides food for a lot of needy folks in Pender and Onslow County. They're currently doing a capital campaign. They've actually outgrown their space. And so any support that anybody can give to that effort is greatly appreciated. And that's all I have.
Okay, the next item is for the board to go into closed session to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body to reserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged. So thank you all. We're gonna get into
You need a motion
closed
to go
session.
into
Yeah,
closed session?
Yes.
we do.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I'll make the motion to go into closed session.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.